Welcome to the Life of Passion podcast, and I'm so excited to be speaking with my friend Vanessa Simpkins this week. She's going to be sharing so much about her amazing journey as a 8-figure CEO, founder of Take Your Life Back Now, Women's Empowerment Movement, and the best-selling book of the same name. And it's just a fascinating conversation. She talks about how life is speaking to us at all times and how to learn to listen to it better, how to interpret what we're hearing, how to surrender and take big leaps, and how to be okay with the very regular deaths and rebirths in our life. We unpack so much here, going back to ancestry and also looking forward at what's next in her life, being this creative, intuitive, healing artist. She's just a dynamic human being, CEO, speaker, coach, author, and you're going to really love this episode. So strap in. Here we go. One more thing. Made a rookie mistake. Forgot to confirm the sound quality on my side, and the sound's actually coming from my computer speakers inside of an echoey room instead of through my mic like I had intended. So apologize for that. Make sure to catch that next time. Holy shnikes. Now, this is the maiden voyage, by the way. The maiden voyage. You are my first. You are de-virginizing my program. I am so excited. If we were going on a literal voyage, I would have a bottle of champagne and be smashing that shit against where would it be? By the bow, the front of the ship? I don't know yet. But I would be doing that in celebration of this first inaugural podcast. So thanks for being here, Vanessa. I'm so excited to talk to you. We had a brief chat yesterday, but man, I went into like a tunnel with your storytelling, and I was just so engrossed by what you were sharing, and excited to have a conversation where other people can listen in. So first, let me ask you, what does it mean by definition, or like like what constitutes for you like a life of passion?
Great question. I think when you wake up every day and you enjoy what you're creating, where life has deep meaning and harmony.
Love that word, by the way.
Harmony is power. This is something I've really been exploring, experimenting, chewing on from all like creative angles of like, okay, so you have like, the yin and the yang symbol, right? There's a little bit of dark and there's a little bit of light in either one, but they're in harmony. And that harmony is that circle that creates the third, the Trinity. Whether I'm like ripping down a ski hill at warp speed, totally out of control, where something else is guiding me, right? And I'm surrendered to that happens in harmony. That something out of this world happens, but it happens in balance and harmony. It's the same thing when I make art. It's a surrender to the unknown, to the void, when I start hearing myself with the paint on the canvas saying like, I don't know, man, what's going on here? I don't know. What the fuck is this? I don't know. I'm like, oh, this is going to be so good. Stick with it, Vanessa. Keep going, from that void. And so I feel for me right now, like what's alive for you right now is a great question. I love inviting people into what's alive for you right now. Is that kind of unknown, feeling safe in that unknown where things get birthed, where they get created, and different forms of expression. So a life of passion for me is like not being afraid of going there and trying that and seeing what happens. And that balance, that harmony is kind of like a portal and a gateway.
Yeah, into everything, right? To the infinite.
Into the next evolution of you, right?
Right.
Evolution comes when we have the courage to like destroy and create.
Yeah.
The new does not happen without a destruction, right? When we hold the tension of those two opposites, there is destruction and then there's creation. It doesn't, your old life, your new life is going to cost you your old life, right? What must die in order for something new to be born? People are like, you're really like talking about death. I'm like, well, I'm an artist. I'm a creative. And so, 8-figure CEO here. And a lot of things I had to like, a lot of things that I've done in my life that most people will never do. And when people ask me about this, I go back to this space of being willing to launch yourself into the unknown,
Yeah.
not let the fear or the ego or the old identity come to, keep you in that little box, that safety zone.
Yes, it's a continual, like, I've found that, like, life will bring me. I always thought, like, my first big death and rebirth was, like, a one-time thing until I realized it's a continuous thing. And so, in speaking with this, part of what our conversation was yesterday before, recording this, was death and rebirth. We had a couple of different stories that you were sharing around your own, and I would love for you to share, like, when was the first, like, that first big, oh man, this old me is no longer fit for what I'm trying to create or where I'm going, and you were even maybe even conscious, I'd say, of the death and rebirth, unless the story's so good prior to when you were conscious. I'll take either one.
Well, that's like a loaded question. I'm 46 years old. I
Yeah.
can look at my life now in cycles. And, there's three big, massive cracks or
Mhm.
spiritual awakenings, or, where we crack our identity and we have access to a whole new expanded what is reality, right?
Yeah.
When our consciousness expands. The first one would probably be in a little beach hut bungalow in Thailand where I lived for 5 months in a $4 a night beach hut bungalow, 21 years old. I spent my 21st, 22nd birthday teaching English in Japan, traveling, wound up, did a paddy diving certification in Koh Tao, this tiny little island, and
Mhm.
started doing yoga with this guy that looked like Osama bin Laden for 3 hours every morning, living with a little tribe, little community on the beach, and swimming out to my friend's boat and eating barracuda for dinner in an open aired restaurant I had a massive spiritual awakening. I
Okay.
had like a full circle journey where I didn't know where I was going. I didn't know if I was going to go to Australia or go home back to Canada. And I'd been traveling for a year and a half. And I had this coconut fall on the top of the roof of the beach hut bungalow, and as I was asking the universe this question, and it was like, "Oh my gosh, I'm going home," and the waves crashed, and then I was like, "Oh my god, I'm really going home. I'm going home.
Yeah.
I'm going home," right? And all of a sudden, all the bugs, and it was just like sign after sign of the universe or God, or when we have these moments of unity, of oneness, of allness.
Mhm.
That was the first one
Mhm.
for me, and I went back to Canada, and I decided to be a traveler in my own city, and, that was the first one. The second
Okay.
one would be the Take Your Power Back Now book, sharing a story that I never wanted to share,
Mm.
um, where I escaped a hotel room with, nearly died in a hotel room,
Mm.
um, exiting a toxic relationship,
Mhm.
and nearly died, got out of the hotel room, got into the taxi, and I was like, "God, why is this happening to me?" And a booming voice was like, "So you can help women not fall into the same patterns." And then I
Was
started
it
crying because
was
for
it
years I
was it
had
an abusive relationship?
yeah, that was my first book. That's a book that launched the global women's empowerment movement, the Take Your Power Back Now book. That's probably
Oh,
when we
okay.
met, right? I had written it. It was published when we met at the Archangel event. That was 10 years ago in 2015, I think.
Right. Yeah.
Yeah.
That's when
Mhm.
yeah. I mean, I was at 2014 too, but I'm not sure if I met you at that one, but I know I saw you at 2015, so.
Yeah. And so that
Wow.
that would be the second kind of big death and rebirth, going from like, um I remember being in Hawaii and the psychic woman was like, you have this little speedboat of business, but you're gonna write a new book and it's gonna be an oil tanker." And I was like, "I'm not writing another book, sweetheart."
It's gonna be an oil tanker. Wow, okay.
And that turned into, an 8-figure business, over $12 million in sales, thousands of women's lives transformed. I had a 30 people working for me, $3.5 million in sales in 2019. I was married. I mean, it was like a freight train of a business. And people would say, "How did you become so successful?" Like, I was like, "Listen, this is a movement. It's an out of control train, and I'm hanging on by an umbrella, and my legs are flying out the back. Okay, and I'm on for the ride. It's taking me, right?
Right. Right.
It's
So
like
if
I'm not
the answer to
controlling
the
this."
question, yeah, the answer was the question is like, you tell me how I'm doing.
And I
Okay.
think that's what happens when we surrender in the unknown and love comes through us as us.
Mm,
That's not in control. That's not being
yeah,
safe. That's not, needing external validation and safety. That is very much crack the eggshell on the ego, and that egg turns into a new souffle,
so,
right? It gets to transform when it's outside of the shell. And so a lot of my work has been about exploring that transformation, expansion, growth. Like,
mm,
how does this all work? Our purpose, and so that movement was very much about helping people share their stories and live their God-given purpose, and then
mm,
connect it with some really cool simple video marketing, expression, because
sure.
trauma has to come out of the body. We have to share the story. We have to be seen and heard. um, so that would be the second big, radical awakening, the death and rebirth.
Mm,
And then in 2020, I moved here to this house in Mount Shasta,
wow.
and I bought it in 2018. Gutted the house, like I
Mhm,
gutted my soul. I got divorced. I started painting. I wanted to make art.
mm,
Um, Radical crack in consciousness. I'd call this like individuation. I studied Carl Jung's work on
yeah,
what happens in midlife. And I mean, the perfect storm. You got your hormones going on, you get a divorce, you start healing trauma, you start making art. Are the UFOs going to land in my front
yeah.
yard? This is a really very
At
spiritual
Shasta, they
place.
might. For sure, yeah, exactly.
And I thought I was losing my mind. I mean, I didn't know. But when you do awaken your consciousness, you lose your mind. And what I came to realize here just very recently, I found these two empty butterfly cocoons and two pieces of wood in the wood pile. And I was like, oh, we're out of the cocoon, man. Pah! Wings are out, man. Whew, here we go.
Okay.
And what I also discovered in painting, I don't know if you want me to share a bit of that story, but I had these two horses, so the symbols of power, right? A dark horse and a light horse. And they were two, one was a
Yeah,
painting print,
definitely share this. Yeah.
another one was just a white horse image. And I had them on two opposite sides of my bedroom in a house in Southern California. When I moved here, I put them together because I wanted to end duality. And I had this dream catcher that I had bought my sister. Um, she was having a baby, and I loved it so much I kept it. I bought her another one, and so that dream catcher on top of the two horses kind of symbolized these new children that were going to be born in the world without the trauma. You know what I mean? Like these new earth kids that were coming in, where masculine and feminine was balanced, duality was over. And that was kind of like a cool little symbol. Like, I'm very big on like Marie Kondo your life, like the way you put it's beyond this. It's like almost an artistic, I don't know what it is. It's a thing that I do where I put things, symbols, words, pieces, art, move things around the house, and that changes. We're always being impressed. We're always impressing our subconscious. We're always living out our concepts of ourself, the stories we have of ourselves, and these symbols. Art is very symbolic. And so
Mhm.
I'm listen, I'm painting my back deck. I'm microdosing on mushrooms. Stop drinking alcohol. But I mean, so let's talk about the addiction of healing, the journey of healing addictions, which has also
Mhm.
been a big thing in my family. But at this
Mhm.
point, I am painting the deck, microdosing on mushrooms in the afternoon, and listening to gospel music. When I finish painting the deck, I decide to start painting the outside of the house. And then I get into painting my basement, the
Mhm.
subconscious, like reappropriating it. And one day I take too many mushrooms and I am tripping out, sitting in my bathtub, looking at these horse paintings, and I see
I,
like,
I'm going to pause you. Hearing the story yesterday, I don't want to ruin your flow, But from hearing it yesterday, I think you took just the right amount. But keep
I
going.
think so too. Well, I don't want to be a proponent of like everybody take drugs, because
Right.
it can be, unless you have the tools to integrate what comes up in your consciousness, it can be very healing. People have healed themselves of, diseases, cancer.
Sure.
All right. And it can
Or
also
traumatizing.
it can also traumatize you if you don't
Yeah.
have the tools to integrate what gets unleashed in your consciousness. I am
Yeah.
totally sober. I don't drink. I don't take drugs. Most dangerous thing I put in my body is like a cup of coffee. Okay, that's about it. That's all I need, folks. I do not need psychedelics. But I have had some. I've been a seeker all my life to look at where is the truth. Um, so I'm in the bathtub. I see a demon in the white horse's hair, an evil eye, and a crow in the dark horse, and I freak out, jump out of the bath, remove these paintings, and the next day in the morning, I'm journaling about this fear that had come up. And I had chickens in the backyard, in the chicken mansion, and one of them comes up the stairs and sneaks under the gate and eats my blooms, my flowers, and my flower pots on my deck. This one chicken. And I'm listening to it click, 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 click up the steps as I'm journaling about my fear. And I'm like, this is about you being afraid to make the fucking art, Vanessa. You have the art tables, all the art paraphernalia in the garage, and you never make the art. You always got something better to do. And I just come out of the shower. My hair was in a turban. I blast out of the door and I recreate the first piece of art, which was that dream catcher. And then later on, kind of the dark horse and the light horse repainted on top of them and transformed them, and put them back. Put them in different places in my house, in the basement, in subconscious, in the living room, in the conscious mind. And then I'd rented out my house on Airbnb. That was a whole trip, looking at like who you become, these things that we create, like, oh, I want to be free. So I go out and travel to Idaho, Montana, Wyoming on a 35-day crazy spiritual adventure. But then, when the cleaning ladies don't show up, who becomes a cleaning lady? I do. And so looking at, the ancestors, like my father was this famous artist, my grandfather and his two uncles, National Gallery, National Archives, Hall of Fame, Letters from the Queen of England, founded the Canadian Cartoonists Association. I mean, really famous artists. And here I am in this house wanting to needing to make art and bumping up against the addiction, right? My father was also an addict. He died with no teeth. He, died of addiction at 66 years old. Brilliant creative, but pulling apart your identity from that, and also having a reverence for your ancestors, and also the healing of all that trauma. And on the other side of my family, my grandmother was born in the Ukraine. She moved to France. She had a miscarriage. Then she moved to Canada. They had a cherry tree. She put me in her cherry tree when I was 6 years old, and I was terrified. And then I didn't want to come out of the cherry tree. I had so much fun. I come down the driveway with the real estate agent here. I see the cherry tree, the big 200-foot tall tree. And I'm like, sold, bought the house, never bought a house before in my life. Okay.
Right.
And my grandmother died. She made this plum jam 35 years after her death. Everyone's still eating her plum jam. Okay. I make plum jam, like the plum tree, the cherry tree. I'm making sourdough bread. I find morel mushrooms in my yard. Like, it's these ancestors. It's like this time here in this house has almost been like such a cocoon for this reverence, revering our ancestors.
It's another coming back home. It's another coming home from, like that first story. Yeah.
Another layer. And so it was a holy battle for me to make art. Oh, that's one thing. And I turned my a garage into an art studio. And I'd rented out this house on Airbnb recently and was cleaning it, and I was like, we are so done with this. Like, this is just this thing, this like sound that came out of my mouth was just unbelievable. As I was cleaning the house, my grandmother used to clean these doctors' offices. That's what she did with my mother, and these stories about starving herself to buy her kids a chocolate bar. And I was like, we are so fucking done with that story, man. Like, I love you people and I'm not carrying your shit anymore. However, to the extent that we can hold the depth of the trauma, the pain, the anguish, the whatever it is, the depth of our family's stuff. I believe we come here as souls, and I don't know how it works. I don't know, man. I'm still here. I'm still learning. I don't know. I don't have all the answers. Okay. But I feel like there's some kind of soul journey we come in as these soul families to do. To I don't know what I don't really know because I'm not on the other side yet. But you know, um, to the extent we can hold that is to the extent that we have access to their gifts and beyond.
Yeah. Yeah, I mean,
I,
I believe fully that we're here to clear these lineages and not, not book it forward, to be very clear about the gifts that we were given, right? And what a great blessing and how much is being given to us through through the arts, through through learning what not to do and what to do. And now because we're at this new level of consciousness, we get to choose very clearly what, like we're consciously choosing, accessing our will to consciously choose what we take forward and what we don't, right? What serves and what doesn't. And
yeah.
to say thank you for getting us here, but there's something else that's going to get me where I'm, where I'm heading. So
To revere them, revering the
yeah,
ancestors, yes,
yeah,
and that
absolutely.
also
Appreciation and
in
respect.
yeah, involves holding the depth of the darkness of that,
Mhm.
right? Because again, there's the yin and the yang. There's a little bit of darkness in that light. There's a little bit of light in that darkness. Okay, but the
Right.
harmony, the balance, we're back to that now.
Harmony. Yeah.
So I come back from this trip and I have this whole new perspective. I said, I think I'm gonna sell the house. I'm gonna go make art in Santa Fe, New Mexico. I'm gonna go live in Reno a bit. I saw a bear. It's a symbol of the self. I got bears that climb my, I saw two bears in the cherry tree last summer. I was
Mhm.
wide awake at like 3 a.m. was so charged up with these 200-pound bears coming down the cherry tree. People on Facebook are like, get a shotgun. I'm like, these bears have been eating from my cherry tree for I don't even know how many eons and decades, right? Like, come on, people. Anyways,
Yeah.
last year I saw 3 bears in the backyard. I saw one come right down and with my family, and they were not interested in, like, I put food out for the deer and things like vegetables, and I was like, "Oh man, here's a bear now come barreling down the driveway."
Mhm.
And he actually went to wrestle in the back acre and eat the little termites and the dead stumps. He was not interested in, like, it was like a National Geographic. We're all on the deck. My sister, her 2 kids, her husband
Mhm.
are all like watching this, like, wow, radical. This house has been such the biggest art creation of my life. And I
Mhm.
came back from this trip and I was like, I think we're gonna sell the house, like rent it, sell it. Like I'm unattached.
Yeah.
And that to me was like, wow, check the box on success.
Mhm.
Not being attached, like, there's another
Mhm.
unknown we're getting into now. Do you know what I mean? And I'm
Yeah.
excited about it. I don't care how it's gonna go. I don't care how. I'm not that's not my job. And so
Mm.
I had to move some of the artwork, and when I came home from this Airbnb trip, into Reno, skiing, I had so much fun. Oh my god, I love Tahoe.
That's
I
good.
put I put the, art piece that dream catcher back, the one that I had painted, underneath the dream catcher in my window.
Mhm.
Alignment, right? And I just looked at it and I was like, "Whoa, we're there, man. It's happened. Like, this is complete."
Mhm.
And so I was outside, putzing around the garden, cleaning up. I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna miss my garden and my flowers," and like having a moment, crying in the backyard, and it's, "Oh, what am I doing?" You have those moments, and then I see the dream catcher in my window, in my from the backyard, and I see it in the window, and I see these 3 butterflies. So the surrender, I got this tattoo. The 3 butterflies, in the window, and I'm like, "Oh," it's like such a sign of like, "Yeah, we're transformed now, like, it's all good." And I go around the side of the house, and I'm like, "Yeah, but my big trees." I have these like 200-foot tall trees. They're like ancient beings,
Mhm.
deep roots,
You know,
that energy
I
that's
have a
here.
love affair with trees. Trees are Yeah. I don't
Amazing.
know what it is. It's just literally like this love affair of trees. But yeah,
Me too.
I'm sure they're amazing.
And there's a huge grove of them are all around my property. There's like just maybe 9 or 10 of these ancient ponderosa pine trees that are 200 feet tall. There's one that's particularly big. It's on the granddaddy in the backyard. And I'm looking at it and I'm like, "Oh, my trees." And it's sad again. And all of a sudden, here's this it's a plane, but it's just shooting straight up right next to the tree, right? Skyrocket. And I start laughing and I'm like, "Oh, when we awaken our consciousness, and I think we're all here. I mean, I believe we're all maybe, certainly you're going to have life talking to you at all times because there's nothing else out there. It is oneness. The tree can talk to you, the butterflies flying through the air, the song. I had quite a radical awakening with this song a couple of years ago after a breakup, and it was talking about Santa Fe, New Mexico. Sail Away to Santa Fe. It's called The Dance and the Wonder. It's a great song.
Mm.
And I was like, "Oh shit, we're gonna make art." My dad used to talk about Santa Fe, New Mexico. Holy smokes, here we go. And I've been kind of putzling around the last couple of years. And a friend of
Yeah.
mine gives me this beautiful coat. It's this wool Aztec coat. Looks like it was made in Santa Fe. And I'm like, "We're going to Santa Fe." And now I'm like, "Well, here we go." Right? The art's coming out. I love what I'm creating. I love what I'm creating again, which
Mm.
is the real check the box and unattached.
Yeah. Yeah. That
So
right back to what you said at the beginning about what makes a passionate life, right? Like love what you're creating. And the unattachment piece is a really big thing. It sounds like it's allowed you like I wonder, is that something that you got conditioned into you? Do you feel like you just came into the world with that ability to kind of, even though I'm sure there's so much more to the stories in between difficult moments where it doesn't feel super easy to move or make the change, but yet I'm hearing someone who has made so many shifts and changes, and it sounds fluid, but I bet you it's been bumpy in between. And what's giving you the courage to do that? To go from Thailand back to home, to go from living in this home that you clearly love, but it's time to go. Like, how do you do that? You know, I
well,
know how
there
I do. How do you?
I would be lying to you if I didn't tell you there were years where I prayed to die. Healing addiction, looking at like the choices of men or the patterns, you know, and then renting this house. It's a weird paradox of like you do something, it's successful, but it's actually not what you wanted to do. It's so weird. So you do another thing and there's another death and a rebirth and you just keep going, right? It's really the Airbnb thing for me was that. And I remember one winter I went to Hawaii and nearly died in a riptide. That was and I'd been praying to die for years. Didn't die and here it is. I'm gonna be sucked into these rocks and I have a come to Jesus moment. That's a whole other
Mm,
story about and I get out of the water. I was sweating in the water. Like I was sweating. I don't know if you've ever sweat in the water, but that was a come to Jesus moment. And I had this idea to
mm,
swim that way, got out. And I mean, there's a whole other story of so much. There's a lot of Kauai, Hawaii, and Mount Shasta are these portals. People say there's a bridge to Lemuria, the Lemurians. Like there's so many. I can tell you that it is both places are super mystical, the darkness and the light, the height of each on
the
each of these
extremes.
places
Yes.
is
Yeah.
extreme. It
Yeah.
is conscious expansion on hyperdrive. And
Yeah.
everybody here in Mount Shasta will tell you that. Everybody in Kauai will tell you that. And these are two places I've lived in.
Yeah.
I've been going back to Kauai for 15 years.
Mm,
My dad actually passed away when I was traveling with my sister on the islands. That's a whole other story.
mm,
Both places I was like, I'm gonna live here. And then enter studying the Bible and looking at that mystical book. It was a radical. I had a Jehovah Witness lady knock on my door for 9 months. I had a guy who cleaned the driveway give me a Bible. I mean, like I watched The Chosen for 9 months over, and that's all I could watch. I had a man come to my door, a friend of mine, an old pastor, give me a saddle, and it was like time to jump back in the saddle, baby.
Right.
So you ask me like, how do you go through these deaths and rebirths? Like, what's influenced you? I live my life very guided with symbols, signs, and in following my intuition. I have
I hear
always
that. I want to touch on that too. Keep going. Yeah.
Yeah, I have always my father was an artist. I grew up traveling. We sold a painting, he'd pick up a check at a gallery, "We keep going," it was very free. We had a
Mhm.
very we but we also had, my mother was a hoarder, and there was alcoholism and, like, super dysfunctional, you know? Um But this like, the view I was dragged around to art galleries. I mean, my mother cooks the most incredible food. She is a French freaking rock star chef who always had these huge elaborate gardens. I'm so grateful.
Wow.
I'm
Yeah.
so grateful, you
Yeah.
know? I have a huge garden here. I'm like, "Oh, am I gonna deal with all these?" Anyway, next garden here might be even bigger. Who knows? Um,
That would be.
so one of the things I've So I think we're always very like we have this in our blood, the gifts again from our families, right? From our
Yeah.
ancestors. Um, I've gotten into human design, Gene Keys astrology, Carl Jung's work on dream analysis, healing ancestral. I got certified in this like really cool. When you look at everything, it's really about being seen and heard and having compassion, kindness, care, grace for these parts of ourselves, right? And
Yeah.
the artistic expression, the different modalities that we can express because there's such a radical thing for me to be like, "Oh, best-selling author, run your own live events, Vanessa, you made millions of dollars, you're a speaker, you're a coach to the coaches, and you make all these courses," and not coming out that way, folks. Not coming out in a podcast, didn't have the words to put, was not coming out in a course, like, it just came out through art.
Yeah. This new form of voicing your story or expressing yourself this time was not like before, and this time it's coming literally through art, and because
Through
art
art,
is a lot
through
of things, right? Like you speaking on stage is a form of art too, but this for you is like literally like creation, paintings. It's
paintings, yeah, and through dancing, there was a time here where I thought,
okay.
the roof was gonna blow off the house. The levels and I think this is what happens when we heal trauma. It's like we close those leaks, and now we, like, unlock this energy that I mean, it was nuclear Dallas. I felt like the roof was gonna blow off the house. I couldn't even hit record on the camera. I was like, the energy that cursed through me was out of this world. And I started looking and said, maybe this is a Kundalini awakening. What the heck's going on here? What is Goonie
Yeah.
Goo Goo? Are the UFOs going to land in my front yard? Like, I still can't give you a definite, this is what happened, folks, because it was a perfect
Mhm.
storm. And I don't really care. I just, I'm grateful that I'm able to have the language, have my hormones on track,
Yeah.
making art, loving my life, am vulnerable, can share, from a place of maybe that next evolution, like, okay, we're here
Mhm.
now.
Mhm.
Not in the victim story of it. Um, I don't know if that answers your question.
I'm sure in there someone listening got more than one answer, probably an answer to a question I didn't even ask. I mean, because it sounds like from the way that you describe your dad, like, I grew up in a family of addiction as well, okay? And like we talked about getting these gifts from the ancestors, sometimes the gifts come through what seems like these curses, because it allowed me to be able to have this kind of hyper awareness of my surroundings and to be very like in tune with my surroundings when there's so much chaos going around in your world. You learn to be very aware. And that could be very traumatizing and triggering until you learn that it's also a gift where you have this next level of sensitivity and attunement. Right. So that's what I heard. I heard like your dad getting that next dollar from a big chunk of money from this art piece allowed him to like, all right, let's go. Train keeps going, and there was like this joy in being fluid and moving in that way
that you now just do innately because you're so, you're tuned in. You look at the signs, you trust the sign, and then you go to the next thing. You
And a
surrender.
love for nature. My father taught me about the beauty in
Mm,
nature,
right.
being in the natural world, like beauty, the harmony, even in a painting, when you look at like what makes something interesting and attractive, it's the dark. It's actually the darkness with the light.
That's my job.
Um, if it was all light, it would be boring. If it was all dark, it would
Mhm.
be boring, right? So this kind of stance. But you're right, it's from the gifts that we get. When I look back in the past, I started teaching entrepreneurs about high ticket sales, not from a course that I did, but from selling my father's artwork when I was in my 20s, which I mean,
Right.
listen, there's some really effed up, triangulation, enmeshment, parentified child, like all that stuff. Okay. That was in there, me trying to help my dad with his art and made him his first website. But that also led me into helping other artists and entrepreneurs and healers
Mhm.
to overcome all of their unworthiness and make their courses and programs sell. And I still teach that.
Mhm.
I just do it
Mhm.
in a bit of a different way with more automation because I don't have time for sales calls, folks.
Mhm.
Not interested. But I love to help people know themselves, like
Right.
diving into some of these technologies and looking, it's confirmation, to really own own who and what you are and like what is alive for you right now.
Mhm.
And to take the leap of faith, to not let the fear, because that's another part of this, right? It's like, how do you people have these quantum leaps or these timeline jumps, or
Right.
how does this happen? And
Yeah.
it's the willingness to surrender
Yeah.
to the unknown and to not be so in control. And I mean,
The
there's
releasing of the expectations, like you said earlier, that's one of the major ones. Not having this attachment about how it's supposed to look when you surrender. Like a lot of people will with the idea of them letting go. Well, I'll let go if I know such and such is going to happen. If so and so is going to return my call, or if I'm going to make X amount of money, if I'm going to be able to feed my family, then I'll let go. It's like, well, then it's not letting,
there's
it's not
no
letting go.
guarantee.
Yeah, exactly.
There's
If,
no guarantees, and
if
it
you need
often
that
looks.
confirmation and control, that's not letting go.
Yeah, and people like that should stay in a job and not be an entrepreneur, because it's like a little piece of a breadcrumb here, and you fail, you fail, you fail, you fail, and that's success. It's on. If there was a fence and you think that's a straight fence, well, like you're jumping on one side, the other, and you're in a straight line. That it's messy. It's real success is a whole bunch of failures that you just don't stop. I don't know. Like, I'm a Capricorn. We're gonna climb a mountain, and we're gonna climb another mountain, and we're gonna climb. We're gonna keep climbing. Oh, we got to that top of that mountain. Guess what? There's another mountain. You know what I mean? Like, we're just these persistent. I don't know if that's part of it. That's why I love to look at people's charts and see, like, oh, how interesting. Oh, you got this over
Yeah,
here.
that's in
Oh,
there, right? Right.
that's super
Yeah.
fascinating too, because until you know yourself, and I think this is what
Mhm.
is so exciting about midlife, right? It's like, well, we've done a few cycles now, folks.
Mhm.
Okay. We've been in a few rodeos. It's not my first rodeo. You can be influenced by other people. You can be influenced by, society. Society is all
Right.
about certainty, you know what I mean? Safety, Colgate, brush your teeth, get your life insurance, all this shit.
Mhm.
Well, I think a lot of people, government, your family's history, expectations of other people. Until you know thyself, you can really be influenced by all of these things.
Mm.
So that's one of the things I've really enjoyed doing is helping people, kind of peek into their chart. Um, and oftentimes when people work with me, mostly one on one, they, there's somebody in the family who's a narcissist, who's an addict. There's been a rift in the church or God or their connection with God or what that means to them. And I've had some beautiful conversations with people, and inviting them to express, to tap into, releasing that, to loving themselves, the wholeness, to the harmony, and
Mm.
watching these radical breakthroughs that people have that are
Yeah.
not linear, they're not logical. I had this two recent clients who invested in doing, oh, I want to do a coaching program with you. They pay me, and all of a sudden, a guy goes to quit his job and they offer him 6 times more money. And he's like, I can't leave. I'm like, well, you're welcome. That was a big breakthrough you didn't expect, eh? It's like you just catalyze somebody like that. Like, that's not linear. That's not what was expected. Yeah, but you got what you wanted, just not in the way you expect it would happen.
Yeah,
Another
yeah.
woman invested in me. She's like, let's do these courses. And she's like, you won't believe what happened. I got invited to become the VIP in this company that's got this $100 million deal. And I've been wanting to work with them for 6 years and was looking to always move. And she was like moving in and out of these houses, and it wasn't the right house. There was mold, there was this, there was that. And then I think I'm going to move over here and do this position that I've been wanting for years. I'm like, well, there you go. It's another one, like another radical breakthrough that is so non-linear. And what I find interesting is these people, like, something connected us. They followed their intuition. And, so it's like, do the next thing that is right. And you just keep doing that. And if you don't stop doing that, eventually that next evolution births, you know what I mean?
Yeah, and it'll probably be better than you anticipated.
It always is.
Right.
And it never happens the way you expect it to happen.
Yeah, your mind and your ego wants to know and thinks that it has some clue. And yeah, it's often, as they say, God laughs at our plans. Um, and I think one thing I know is going to come up for people, and it's about following these signs. The butterflies and the bears and the dream catchers and the coconuts falling on roofs. It's like it's very easy for people to either assume that they're getting signs, misinterpret, right? Because it is still open to us, having a perspective about something occurring or a perception of something occurring. And so, how do you know when something's a sign truly directing you versus not?
You got these rare, amazing questions, Dallas. So good. You, first of all, people miss signs because they are operating at such fucking warp speed, so disconnected.
Mhm.
Okay. Most people that have not slowed down enough to be present because trauma is leading, gotta, go. Hey. The
Don't look
workaholism,
down here. Don't look over here. I gotta. Right, right. That's
don't
right.
slow down
Right.
enough to feel. Those are
Yeah.
trauma responses, right?
Yeah.
And
Totally.
so before I got sober, that was my life. Before I had no time. There was like, I couldn't stop or the whole thing would, come crashing down. And once it did, 30 team members gone. Like, but all that stress gone too. All the money, oh shit, what am I doing now?
Mhm.
But it was like, then now you're present. Now you can actually slow down. You're not going to see the signs if you're racing through life or if you're involved in, there's so many addictions. Workaholism is an addiction. Drinking, smoking, sexting, it goes on and on. Relationships can be addictions to not look inside the self.
Totally. Totally.
But when
So
you,
the first part of what I'm hearing is simply to slow down, right? To like put aside, like notice how distracted you are, and once you do, slow down, start to eliminate some of the
stop.
distractions, right?
Yeah.
So,
Because
so
I
you
always say,
can see the signs.
and to be able to see the signs, you got to be slowed down enough and present. Okay. So
Right.
that's the first key. And I always say it's great to have a routine. It's great to have a routine. And it's great to break that fucking routine. Like when I call it these like morning coffee walk, coffee adventures. Like just take a coffee and go somewhere new that you've never been before. Take your camera, take a book, take them. Like, I was very much influenced in my career with Julia Cameron's work, with Clarissa Pinkola Estes, who wrote like The Woman Who Runs with the Wolves, and like,
Okay. I've heard
these.
of her, but I haven't read her stuff.
Oh, she's amazing. She's done a lot of very like mystical women's work, nature, archetypes. I think she also worked or studied with Carl Jung. But Julia Cameron's work was about taking these art, afternoon or an evening or a whatever once a week of like going somewhere new. And so I do this. And that's where I get my best ideas, when you're not always in the same bubble of all of your things that, kind of tie you into this identity, right? So traveling, going to new spaces, that's been very good for me. But when we are slowed down and when we do break our habits to be inspired, right? What is inspiration? Being in spirit, come inspired, seeing things in a new lens. Um, I think that's part of it. And when we do get signs, it's also good to ask, hey, what is this? Like, show me a sign. Sometimes I've often like asked, we're creating with our will word,
Yeah.
our word, we're creative. And so sometimes, we can ask, we can choose, we can believe, we can,
Mm,
but to ask, hey, what is this? What is it? Show me a sign if you want me to do this or that.
right.
Hey, people can call that a prayer. People can say that they're asking the universe for clarity. I got really big into symbology. Man, I don't know if it was like an initiation of shamanism here. My dad's best friend in Canada was a shaman. We grew up very close with his family, doing
Yeah.
like vision quests when I was 13
It's
years
so
old.
similar. Shamanic paths and shamanic people is very similar to the tortured artist.
Mm.
So many similarities. So many similarities. Going into the darkness, into the shadow, needing, like I won't go into a hole with that, but yes, it's interesting.
It makes a lot of sense.
Yeah.
I had like just radical experiences with like moths landing on my door, they're
Mm,
from the other side. These
mm,
big white moths, these big furry moths all around the
mm.
house and in the
Wow.
window and like on the front door. I'd be like, wow.
Mm.
Like I didn't even have to leave my house, there are all these signs and and this transformation of like, so there's so many ways to get signs.
Yeah, you ask. I mean, I love the fact that, like you said, it could be a prayer, however you want to contextualize it or frame it. It could be a prayer, it could be but it's as simple as just even asking. So now we've slowed down enough, right? Hopefully, or we started to even let the sign in. We've learned to use our voice so we can ask, learning that we now know we can ask for signs. And then when a sign comes, like, how do you interpret it the right way, or is there a wrong way? Is there only is it whatever you make it to be?
Well, I mean, we are meaning making machines.
Right, right.
We are
I
like the
think that's
mind is a
because
meaning making machine.
I've had clients who are worried about that, and I know what my response is, but I'd love to hear for someone that like you. How would you respond to that? Someone who's like, "Well, I don't know if that's. How do I know if that's a sign?" The
I
moth
guess
coming to my door.
it's for me personally, it might be very different for everybody, but for
Yeah,
me
well, I want to
personally,
know.
there's just a like, oh, that feels good.
Mm,
Oh, oh, and so that feels right. That's just
yeah,
like an inner like, yep. Oh, and sometimes it's a sign that's like, oh boy, I don't want to look at that. It can all, but the
totally.
rightness of it, like it's like a
Yeah,
puzzle piece that just goes click, and you're like,
mm,
oh, like it's a wow,
yeah,
and it can,
unavoidable.
it actually comes from being vulnerable with other people, like true connection and intimacy. That was another big lesson here for me, where Grace literally came to knock on my front door, my neighbor Grace. Like, we're
Oh,
always
there's a sign. Talking
literally.
about
Yeah,
signs,
yeah,
yeah.
yeah. I mean, when I'm telling you, like, there's no separation, like, it's
Right. Agreed.
terrifying both and
Mm,
enlightening. Enlightenment is
mm,
terrifying to see there's no separation between
mm.
the 2 dead trees in your back acre and, your marriage, bye. You know what I mean? Those, the signs when you start seeing everything as a reflection of you.
Mhm.
It's terrifying. And if you don't like the reflection, what are we going to do with it? Well, strap your titties on tight. It's time to do the inner work. Now we're talking about integration and okay, healing and but the vulnerability we're always faced with. Someone you go to the grocery. How are you today? I'm fine. Is that the truth? Well, when you have the fineness to be like, tell the truth. If it's ugly, if you don't feel good, if you feel like crap, if you're stressed out, like so.
Mm.
I had breakup in this house after I got divorced. I lived with a super sexy mountain man for about a year. Talk about a mirror. Oh boy. Wow. Enter shadow work. He's like, oh, are you afraid of the dark? I'm like, no. He takes me on his first date to a cave. Okay. So just to preface the whole relationship.
Mm.
And when we broke up, I was so distraught. I was burning things in my back acre, and my neighbor came by with a big tractor. He's part of the fire department. He's like, "You can't be burning this. Let me come back with a tractor and make you like a perimeter so you can burn safely." And I gave him some eggs from the chicken coop, and his wife came back with the bowl. And her name is Grace, and she came to knock on my front door, and she's like, "How are you?" And I was like, "Wow!" Telling all the like, "Here's the real deal,"
I know, right?
So we don't get the reflection or the gift or the whatever it is, the nourishment, the soul, the sign, the unless we're open and vulnerable to really share our truth with another. We can keep the mask up, we can look good. You feel
Mhm.
like shit, look good. You know what I mean?
Mhm.
That's another part of, I think, like what is living a successful, passionate life is you got to feel really good.
Mhm.
You can't just look good. You got to, and so a sign can come from somebody else or, from that space sometimes. Like when you're on a trip and you're just driving and listening to music and, you're taking the space. So I would add like vulnerability in there and
Yeah,
space, that's
yeah,
part of the slowing down. And
yeah.
then, you asked some
So you
really
have like a felt sense. It feels like this. When it happens, sometimes it's just unavoidable, right? And grace knocks at the door. But sometimes it's left to interpretation, and for you, you can feel kind of like when that puzzle piece clicks in. Like there's certain words that you're using, right? That are like pointing me into the direction of like how you operate. Like there's this inner knowing, an inner sense. You feel it to be true, right? Like you're already open to it because you've got that space. So you've learned to build like a relationship with it.
yeah.
And then when a sign comes, you know, like one part I like that you said you're choosing, right? I'm choosing to let this mean what it means, but it's also because there's this feeling in your body. It's like this knowing that locks in.
Yeah, it's
Oh,
like, it's maybe a practice to live an inspired,
oh, for sure,
deeply
practice.
nourishing, connected, like, you surrender to it because at some point I feel like, the greatest artists make the best music, usually from heartbreak or pain, or, you don't awaken your consciousness because there's nothing to watch on Netflix. It's suffering. Something dies, an end of a career, a marriage, a move, a health crisis, a challenge. Like I listened to a lot of Ram Dass's work. There was a book that he had that I kept seeing everywhere. I would see it in the American Express airport lounge. I'd see it at this retreat place. And I would be like, what the heck? Finally, I went to Maui. I was like, I don't have any memories in Maui. It's all new here. But then I walk into my life. I walk into this woman's house with a little black dog and the same carpets and the same food and the same relationship problems and the same white BMW. And I'm like, everywhere you go, there you are, man. You can't fucking run away from yourself, Vanessa. You know. As a surrender, I just went to the beach, swam with the turtles, walked the dog, grabbed a carrot cake, drank some apple juice, had an outdoor shower, meditated, and went to bed for a whole month. I didn't go anywhere, but
Mm,
I went places, but not,
right.
physically.
Yeah.
I just stopped. I just stopped. It's just whoa. And one night I look under the coffee table, and lo and behold, there's Ram Dass's book, and it's called Be Here Now. And I started reading this book, and I'm like, I'm not crazy.
Yeah.
This is awakening, man. I'm not nuts.
Yeah. Right.
Hallelujah. Because I'd seen this book. I'd seen this book everywhere, but I never had the time.
Yeah.
I never took the time to slow down to even read the book. And there it was. It was
Yeah.
but his work is very much about, awakening
Yeah.
and
Yeah.
having a much deeper, I mean, at the end of his life, he was this crazy talented, fit in the box, professor who then started taking psychedelics, who then went to study with a Maharishi, who then spent the end of his days very compassionate, listening with people who are dying, who are on their way out, liberating their soul, their consciousness. I mean, like, so profound.
Mhm.
Um, so you ask about like knowing the signs. I think there's like you just get to, it's normal. It's normal to live like this now. It's so unnormal and feels so wrong and bad and closing to have this like linear life. And I mean, 8-figure CEO, I know how to read a fucking spreadsheet, folks. Okay. I know how to manage a $90,000 a month advertising budget because I did that for myself with my own money and my own credit cards with my own company. Like you don't lose all that. You know what I mean?
Yeah,
That doesn't go away. Can do that. Prefer to do this though.
yeah,
This is more of an edge for me because it's new. It's the, art for me now is like, woo, haven't done that yet. Like I get bored, you
yeah.
guys. It's like I've already done that. It's moving on. I've already done that. That's,
Mhm.
and that's also confronting my own fear. That's why
Mm,
it's for me, yeah, that's why
mm.
it's interesting. So I think we get to maybe to see the signs, and I have a lot of dreams too. I have a
Yeah,
very deep,
I've been using ChatGPT with them.
really,
Well,
that's
yeah, so I figured out this really cool prompt using Carl Jung as even like in the words of or in the philosophy and structure of Carl Jung. Can you break down my dream and dot dot dot? So I've been keeping this dream journal, and I have like 30 dreams, and I'm just one at a time putting it into ChatGPT to break down what the meaning would be, and then what some actual questions and prompts would be. And then at the end, what I'm going to do is give me like an overview of all of them together. So I've been, yeah, but it's something I knew I'm trying. It's pretty cool.
I love that, like,
Pretty cool.
using the power of the Chat GPT to decipher.
Mhm.
I took a dream journal for years, and I would wake up in the middle of the night and just start journaling and
Mhm.
just to get it out and to look at it,
Mhm.
I wonder, do you enjoy that? Do you find it like
So
do
far,
you
it's
find it
really
is
interesting. Yeah, because like I can have my own interpretation. Like we're talking about a lot of these things. It's like, like these signs can be open to interpretation to some degree.
yeah.
What I heard from you is you had some crack in the wall that let light in. You know, these death and rebirth moments that allow you to like slow down and start to pay attention, right? Force you to look at things a different way. But then there's also like this artist in you from your dad, where it's like um, the idea of being new and kind of going with the flow and being creative is fun for you. You're not risk averse. Like you're open to risk, and so surrender is a big thing for you, and so with these signs, when you finally start opening to them and they start coming, there is some level of interpretation, right? But you were already, a lot of times, you were already asking for the sign. So the interpretation is not that far off, I'm sure, because you asked and, well, there's something immediate that comes and you're willing to trust and be vulnerable and trust the sign. So with ChatGPT, I'm kind of there with you, and then I'm like, okay, but is there another layer maybe I'm not able to see? And rather than hire, a dream interpreter, let me try ChatGPT and see what it has to say. And
I
let
love
me let
that.
me see if I can give it a little bit of a Carl Jung voice. And it's fun. It's fun what other interpretations come through that I wouldn't have seen, and I get to tune in. I still get to tune in and say, okay, is that true? Like, oh, that actually makes a good point. That one, man, I'm not so sure, and kind of go through it. So it's interesting.
Super cool. I like how, because there's a lot of talk about AI, right? People are so freaked out about AI. Oh, it's going to take over the world. It's like, okay, listen, it's never going to take over creativity. I use it sometimes for like ad copy to give me some
Mhm.
idea here, and like I can work off of it. And what you're saying is you're using it to interpret, give you some springboards and prompts to look at your dreams, which I think is super cool. I don't think it's going to, run I don't think it's ever going to replace people's creativity or, or should even
For sure.
replace their ability to make meaning. It's never going to replace our intuition.
Yeah. Right.
It doesn't have that capacity. Sorry, folks.
Right.
But it's a good tool. It's a useful tool.
Yeah. I like the idea of anything technology wise. I always say be cognizant and conscious that you're using it and it's not using you.
Yeah.
If you can do that, then you're probably in a good space because I think it could potentially make people art and our interpretations and our voice even more valuable, right? Because it almost becomes like unique. It's like, well, wow, you're willing to go to that depth. You're willing to sit in silence and come up with that, and not just go to the computer to get that answer. It almost has like this intangible value that's
Real.
much deeper and real. Exactly. So I
Real.
hope that does. I hope that doesn't go away. But of course, it's hard to see generations going forward, right? We're talking about generations at the beginning of the call. It's like I don't know what a generation growing up never not having AI is going to be thinking,
Yeah.
right? Like,
Well,
it's going to be interesting.
yeah, when you look at evolution on a whole, I mean, my father was born at a time when they had one radio on the street, and they would go to the guy's house to sit
Oh
by the
wow!
radio and
Right to
listen,
go.
and then you like to his
Right.
passing when, they have cell phones and TV and then they're landing on the moon and and
Right.
now from that to now where we have this thing that nobody, you know what I mean? Everyone's got one of these things. Everyone's got one of these phones that
Mhm.
you can't go anywhere. You need GPS. Like it's such a to see the evolution of technology and not like you said, let it run our lives. This is why nature is so
So
uh,
important and
oh
art. Yeah, I'm with you.
big time.
During the first real Renaissance, like art and nature and community was really the springboard to the next level of industry. It gave birth to another wave of like real civilization, but through the artist, through culture. And so I think we get to another resurgence of that. So I love that you're creating art. Yeah,
Oh,
I
me too.
love
It
that.
feels great.
Yeah, and I love your stories. I think I'm so grateful for your willingness. Like we talked about harmony, death and rebirth, the power of art and expression. You used a term I never heard before that I'm going to quote you on. It's the holy battle. I,
Holy war. Oh
yeah,
yeah.
the holy war. Yeah, and then being willing to surrender and follow the signs. Like there's so much that we could even go deeper on in this particular call, but I think yeah, I'm feeling now is probably a great time to put a button on it. If someone I would love to hear two things. If someone's wanting to reach out and learn more about what you're up to now, maybe buy one of your paintings, or maybe learn more about your programs, where would you direct?
Yeah. Everything is in flux and changing, but I think
Cool.
the best ways to reach me would be on my websites, takeyourpowerbacknow.com and nextevolutionofyou.com. I'm reachable. There's emails. You can reach out there for artwork now. I'm actually making a website. This is another. It's going to be a Shopify store with both my art and my father's art, the reproductions of his prints. That's
Mhm. Cool.
always been something that I wanted to do. So that's in the works. But until then, my two websites, YouTube, you can find me on YouTube, Vanessa Simpkins, or Take Your Power Back Now on Instagram as well. I'm
Mhm.
on there. I think those would probably be the best. I like people send me messages on Facebook, like send me a direct message, reach out to me however you need to, and you can find out more about what I'm up to and what I'm doing and different offers on the websites. I think.
Yeah. You're such a powerful, passionate person. When I met you, for those who don't know her, she's quite tall. So I love the story in the beginning of I was picturing you because I've been to Thailand and it's like certain cultures are just there's just shorter cultures, right? And so you're like bright and light skinned and super tall, and I'm imagining you with all of these like 5'6", like tiny tan people. It must have been quite a sight at that time.
Well, when I went to China and we did like the Mao Zedong's palace, people
Mm,
would stop me, and there would be like, a whole school bus of kids that they would just want to take pictures with me.
That's
I
great.
mean, they were never
I
seen, a 6 foot
right,
2 woman with blonde hair, and
right,
I'd be like,
right,
"What
right.
is going on here?"
Yeah,
Very different.
I went to a little village in India a couple times, this beautiful little village, and, they don't see people with blonde hair very often or blue eyes, and so they wanna stop and take pictures with you, and it's like, it's so interesting. We don't think that way in America, so but anyway,
It
so yeah, so when I first met you, you were just you stood out, and it wasn't just because of your height for me. It was like that your smile right there. You're just so bright, and I felt like this artistry in you because you were already so creatively dressed and like bright and colorful and like really artistically dressed. And so I could see that in you, and we just we clicked right away. So it was great to have you on especially to be the first. So thank you. If you were to give like maybe a sound bite to finish us off on living a passionate life, you've shared so much, but if there was like a final nugget for someone who's really struggling to love their experience right now.
Yeah, I would say do the thing you're afraid to do, you know? And there's like this one quote on Instagram that was like, "Make ugly art every day." Make How to get over perfectionism is to do the thing you're not good at, to fail along the way to getting it right. It's not a failure unless you stop going. And, you know, how do I love my art now? Well, I have a whole bunch of crappy things that I made that you know what I mean? To learn, oh, I can put paint on with a credit card. Ah, that took a long time to get there. A lot of crappy art,
Mhm.
before I like the art. So start imperfectly, do the thing you're afraid to do. Do it every day. That's how you become a master in anything, whether it's video marketing or
Yeah,
painting or dressing or renovating a house or making food or you got to be
definitely.
willing to like do it imperfectly.
Yeah. I always say even the most virtuoso, like violin player, first sounded like they were strangling cats. You know, you gotta be willing to get through that. Yeah. That's fantastic. That's fantastic. Excellent. Well, thank you so very much.
Thank you,
I
Dallas.
appreciate you. You're amazing, and enjoy the rest of your day. Bye, folks.